Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Satchidananda Rupaya Vishwotpatyadi Hetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Namaha. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Hari Om. Salutations to all. So we saw that everybody had gone to Lord Shiva to propitiate him, and Brahmaji requested him to restore Daksha. Daksha was killed by Veerbhadra. So Brahmaji said in the 4th canto, 6th chapter at the end, he said, let the sacrificer Daksha come to life again. Let Bhaga get his eyes, let Pusha get his teeth, let Bhrigu Rishi's mustache and beard start growing. So now that is where the 6th chapter ended. Now we come to the 7th one. So when Brahmaji said all this, Maitreya Rishi is describing this to Vidurji. So Maitreya Rishi says that Lord Shiva, he was pleased and he had a hearty laugh. And then what did Lord Shiva say? Shri Mahadeva Uvacha Nagham Prajesha Balanam Varnayena Nuchintaye Deva Maya Abhibhutanam Dandastatra Dhritomaya. So Bhagwan Shivji, Mahadev said, I don't complain, nor do I recollect any misdemeanor of fools dominated by Lord's Maya, O Brahmaji. I have meted out punishment to them just to teach them a lesson. Meaning, he says, I have not taken anything personally, nor am I angry or upset. But what karma phala I have to give, I have given to teach them a lesson. Remember, we are seeing in this 4th canto 4 Purusharthas. In that first one is Dharma. So Dharma, where this Daksha's sacrifice, where Bhagwan is not propitiated, then that even that dharmic act is of not much spiritual significance. So all the 4 Purusharthas have to be dedicated to Bhagwan. So here he says that I have given the punishment only to correct them. And then he says, Prajapatir Dagdha Shirshno Bhavatvaja Mukham Shiraha Mitrasya Chakshushe Ksheta Bhagam Swam Barhisho Bhagaha. So he says, okay, so let Daksha, his head was cut off and it was thrown into the sacrificial fire, his head got destroyed. So he said that his head has been burnt. Let the sacrificial goat, the head of that goat, be put on the trunk of Daksha, and Daksha will come alive. Now, he says same way, Bhaga, may the eyes of Mitra, may Bhaga start having the vision through the eyes of Mitra. So Mitra also will have his eyes, and Mitra is one of the 12 Adityas. So he says that let God Bhaga look on his share in the sacrificial offering through the eyes of Mitra. Then Pusha have the teeth of the sacrificer. Then may all the other gods who have lost their limbs in that war, may their limbs be restored now that they have assigned to me the remains of the sacrifice. Even the priests, so Adhvaryu, Hota, Udgata and Brahma, these are 4 categories of priests. Each of them have different duties. Brahma is to supervise whether the mantras are being chanted, ahutis are being offered properly or not, etc. Udgata is that those they will actually be the chanters. Then the Adhvaryu, so they will build. So it is said here that the function of the Adhvaryu is to measure the sacrificial ground, to build the altar, to prepare the sacrificial vessels, to fetch wood and water, to kindle the fire, and so on. Now, while doing all this preparation, he is supposed to chant the Yajurveda mantras. And Hota is the one who is actually making the offerings. So he says, may the Adhvaryu and all the other priests, even they, the Ganas of Lord Shiva, they had hurt these priests also. So may all of them, their arms also be restored with the strength of the arms of the Ashwins. The Ashwini Kumaras are the twins. They have the head of a horse and they are the royal physicians. And whoever has lost their hands completely, may they use the hands of Pusha. And let sage Bhrigu have the beard and mustaches of a goat. So everybody, whatever they had lost, they regained in some or the other form. So Maitreya Rishi continues that when Lord Shiva said all this and everybody was to be restored, then people who were there, all the Devatas, Brahmaji, all of them had gone to him. They all said, Sadhu, Sadhu, Ityatha Bruvan. They all said, Sadhu, Sadhu, means well said, well said. It means thank you, O Lord, for restoring all this. And they were fully gratified. Now, all these Devatas, the priests, Brahmaji, they invited Lord Shiva to come now to the place where the sacrifice was going on. Remember, Bhagwan is in Kailas. All of them have gone to Kailas. We saw the description of Kailas in the earlier chapters. So from there now, they are going to the sacrificial fire place. And whatever Lord Shiva said, they accomplished all that. So they joined the head of the goat to the trunk of Daksha. Now, one can understand the symbolism in some way that Daksha was full of I. His head was cut. And the goat also keeps saying that. That's a natural sound of the goat. It keeps saying meh, meh, meh. That is a natural sound. It bleats. That goat is sacrificed so that head of that goat is put on Daksha's trunk. Meaning his ego also is now destroyed. And of course, functionally speaking, that head of his got completely burnt, and then the head of a goat he is having, and that will remind him also of what has happened and how he should remain grounded. He may be the lord of all Prajapatis, but he must remain grounded and serve selflessly, silently. So that's the objective and that's the symbolism there. Now somebody says, why is an animal sacrificed in that yajna? So there are different offerings which are made to different deities, depending on the nature of the deity also. And the Supreme Lord does not require anything. Our bhavana is most important. But there will be other devatas, other, the Dikpalas, so many other divine beings are there. So offerings are made to propitiate, to please. And also the symbolic meaning is there. So not everywhere where the word Aja is written means a goat alone. So in certain rituals, it will mean a goat, especially rituals which will involve power, position, those things. Some places Aja also will mean the rice, the grain which has been there for 7 years. That grain will no more germinate. That grain is offered. In some rituals, it will be the animal will be made from the wheat flour, and that is offered. Symbolic meaning remains the same of giving up the ego and egocentric desires. But depending on the level of the evolution of the person also, sometimes the offerings are made. So there are tamasic offerings which are made, and non-vegetarian food and the animal sacrifice, etc. is done, and especially to deities which are fierce, like Mother Kali, Durga. To those deities, at one level of evolution, the animal sacrifice is done, because everybody is not sattvic enough to do sattvic offerings, chant sattvic mantras, have sattvic bhavana, seek sattvic blessings. There are people of all levels of evolution. So there will be some who will be at that level of evolution where they themselves eat non-vegetarian, and they themselves have many animalistic tendencies also. They also need more of ugra sadhanas to be done. So they may offer. Like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he worshipped Mother Kali, but he did not sacrifice a goat and offer, because his mind is of a different level, uplifted. So it is not that every time Mother Kali has to be worshipped, every devotee has to offer a goat. It depends on the level of evolution, what is the desire in the mind of that person, why some things are being offered. So there are many reasons behind it. So it is not that animal sacrifice was never a part of the Sanatana Dharma. It was a part, but that is not the only type of offering, or that it is not that without that there a particular sadhana is incomplete. Even in a temple, if you go, there will be a Bali Pitha. Now we don't know that a Bali Pitha is not just meant for killing the animal. Bali Pitha has different levels for different devatas and Gandharvas and Apsaras and Siddhas and Dikpalas. So there are different levels of Bali Pitha. Some 3-4 levels will be there. So if you actually see the ritual that the temple priest will do, is the Naivedya, when it is offered, it will be offered first to the Lord in the Sanctum Sanctorum, the main Murti of Bhagavan, where Prana Pratishtha, etc. is done. So it will be offered to that Lord. Then it will be offered to the Utsav Murti, that Utsav Murti which is taken around in the chariot, in the city, etc. So then it is offered to the Utsav Murti. Then it is offered to the Devatas. And this all the divine beings, Devatas, Apsaras, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Siddhas, all of them, Dikpalas. So there are different levels in that Bali Pitha where these offerings will be kept for these deities. So we should not limit the word Bali only to animal sacrifice. Bali Pitha is there in a lot of temples. Does not mean every temple they are doing animal sacrifice, not necessary. In some temples they may be doing, depending on the deity, depending on the type of people who are worshipping the deity, what is the desire in their mind, all that is there. But one has to rise above that level. Slowly, from the tamasic level to rajasic level to sattvic level and then to beyond, one has to rise. So here, Daksha was doing a sacrifice out of ego. Daksha was doing a sacrifice to celebrate his so-called promotion to, the head of all the Prajapatis. And he wanted to show his power and his glory and his strength. And we saw he paid the price for it also. So that head of the sacrificed goat is put on the head of Daksha. And when this trunk and the head were joined, Daksha came to life, and Lord Shiva, he's called Rudra here, that's his main form, Rudra, gave him a very kind, compassionate look. And when he got up from, as though he got up from slumber, he was actually dead, but he woke up as though he woke up from slumber, as though he just had gone to sleep and he woke up. And there, when he woke up, he saw Lord Shiva in front of him. And Lord Shiva, Daksha, his heart was filled with malice against Lord Shiva. But now when Lord Shiva is there in front of him, with a kind, compassionate look, Lord Shiva was standing in front of him, all the malice in the heart of Daksha is cleansed. How? A very nice example given here is, as a pool becomes clear in the autumn, by the virtue of Lord Shiva's look, the impurity in the mind of Daksha is cleansed. Then he felt like offering praises. Daksha felt like offering praises to Bhagavan, but immediately he was not able to sing the stuti of Bhagavan, because he remembered that how, because of his rudeness, his arrogance, his ego, his own daughter Sati immolated herself. So he was filled with grief, his emotions were choked, he was not able to express. But he controlled his mind with great difficulty and he sang the glory of Lord Shiva. And see what he says in the first line itself. He says that, "O Lord, you did me a great favor, in that you meted out punishment to me in order to correct me. Even though I slighted you, you too, Sri Hari and yourself, have no disregard even for fallen Brahmanas. Then how can you ignore those who have taken sacred vows?" For doing the yajna, one has to take certain vrata, follow certain disciplines. So he says, you have never taken offense. It was my ignorance and my ego, and it was right that you punished me. Then he says, appearing as Brahma, you evolved first of all out of your mouth the Brahmanas rich in learning, austerity and sacred vows. Vidya tapo vratadharan mukhatasma vipran brahmatma tattvam avitum prathamam tamasrak. And so, why these Brahmanas were created? For preserving the knowledge of the spiritual reality. That is their main job, to study, to preserve that knowledge, to share that knowledge, to live that knowledge. That is their main job. So he Bhagavan himself becomes the protector of the Brahmanas. He says, it is therefore, O Supreme Lord, that you protect the Brahmana race in all crises, wielding the rod of punishment. So the Bhagavan himself even punishes Brahmanas, then what to talk about anybody else? That's what he means. If Brahmanas get distracted, Bhagavan himself punishes. Sometimes, obviously, through law of karma, he is the karma phaladata. And so he says that just like a cat, the shepherd has a stick. And with that stick, if the cattle goes astray, he may even hit the cattle and get it on track. Same way, Bhagavan protects even those Brahmanas. He says, may the Lord, who, though insulted with abuses piercing as arrows in open assembly by me, overlook that fault of mine. You know, privately also, if that insult has happened, it is one thing. This is in open assembly. Bhagavan Shiva was insulted by Daksha. And Bhagavan still did all this Leela. And he says here that overlooked that fault of mine and saved me from falling down through the vilification of the most adorable by casting his gracious look on me. If this whole Leela had not been done, the consequences for Daksha would have been much more terrible. Not only did Bhagavan give him punishment and teach him the right lesson, but also he does not have any grudge against Daksha. And on the contrary, he has more compassion. So with the compassionate look, Daksha's impurity of mind also got removed. So he says, may that Lord be pleased with his own benevolent act, because I am not capable of praising Bhagavan and his glories and his Leela. Oh Lord, you be pleased with what you have done. I have understood the purpose. I am very grateful that you have corrected me. This is one nice thing, at least from Daksha we can learn, that he accepted his mistake. He accepted that the punishment was a just punishment. And with humility, he expresses this in front of the Lord. Now, when Daksha sought forgiveness of the Lord, and Daksha took the leave of Brahmaji, took permission of Brahmaji, and he resumed the sacrifice. So, just because the sacrifice had been, there was a war and lot of death, etc. had happened in the sacrifice. The entire sacrificial ground was, turned into this war field. So a lot of impurity has taken place in that entire place. So all that has to be cleansed. So for the removal of the pollution caused by the touch of the attendants of Rudra, they are called Pramathaganas, and to continue the sacrifice, the place was cleaned up, and then the Brahmanas offered an oblation called Purodasha. Purodasha. It is written here, a mass of ground rice rounded into a kind of cake, which was intended for Lord Vishnu and placed in 3 separate receptacles. Now Daksha, in his mind, now is sincerely thinking of Bhagavan, you see. This 18th shloka. Advaryunat havisha yajamano vishampate dhiya vishuddhaya dadhyau tatha pradur abhudharihi. Now this Daksha contemplated on the Lord with a pure mind, along with the Adhvaryu, who stood holding the oblation in his hand. And as he stood that way, and Daksha remembered Bhagavan, now Lord Vishnu manifests. Bhagavan Vishnu is called Yajnapati. He himself is called Yajna also. He is Yajnapati also and he is Yajna also. Yajno vai Vishnu, it is said. So Bhagavan Vishnu himself manifests there. Earlier, Brahmaji and Vishnu Bhagavan didn't go to his sacrifice. And he was not even propitiating the Supreme Lords, nor he had kept an offering place for Lord Shiva. It was a full show of his ego and his power that resulted in this entire destruction. Now he is purified in his mind, he has that humility, he has sought forgiveness. And here now he remembers Bhagavan, so Lord Vishnu himself appears. Now there is this description of Lord Vishnu, his form. So Bhagavan is very bright and brilliant, effulgent. That splendor of his illumines all the 10 quarters. And all the splendor of the other devatas is eclipsed by the splendor of Lord Vishnu. And he came there along with Garudji. And Garudji is also called Daksha. In the Shanti Mantra also it comes Svastinastarksho Arishtanemihi. So Daksha, one meaning is wind also, other meaning is Garudji. So he came on Garudji, and the two wings of Garudji are the metrical hymns called Brihat and Rathantara. Now Bhagavan, his complexion is golden, there is a pitambar wrapped around his loins, he had a crown shining like the sun, his face was graced with dark black, the curly hair, as dark as the bees. He has Makara Kundal. This form of Bhagavan is with 8 hands, not Chaturbhuja, with Ashtabhuja, with 8 arms. And what is he holding in those arms? A conch, a lotus, a discus, a shaft, a bow, a mace, a sword, a shield. All these 8 are for what? To protect the devotee, to help the devotee, to make the devotee realize oneness with the Lord. So with all these 8 ayudhas, he appears and he looks like a blossoming Karnika tree, Karnikara tree. Where is Mother Lakshmi? On his chest in the form of the Srivatsa. And he is having a beautiful Vanamala and having a gentle, pleasant smile on his face. There are fans and chauris which looked like swans. They were waving on both his sides. And he shone splendid with a moon-like white umbrella spread over his head. This is the form of Lord Vishnu. Now, when he comes there, everybody gets up. Now, we should remember one thing here, that this is Srimad Bhagavatam. Here, this is Vishnu Pradhan Purana. Vishnu, Lord Krishna, they will always be glorified in this entire Purana. The same episode of Daksha's sacrifice will come in Shiva Purana also. There Lord Shiva will be glorified like anything. So here when Bhagavan Vishnu has appeared, so Brahmaji, Lord Shiva, Indra, everyone, they immediately stand up, they bow down to him, and their splendor is obscured by his brilliance. And they are dumbfounded, stuck with awe, their palms joined over their head. They approach Lord Vishnu. And what is their bhav? In a prayerful mood, they have approached Lord Vishnu. Now, everyone tries to glorify Lord Vishnu with their limited powers of speech, of mind. The infinite glory of the Lord cannot be sung by these finite equipment, but they all try. So first and foremost, so Daksha, he sought the protection of the Lord, the supreme teacher of the Prajapatis, who is the enjoyer as well as the bestower of fruits of all sacrifices. So he sought the protection of the Lord means what? From the ego, we have to protect ourselves. It is not from some enemy outside. Our own ego, our own arrogance, and our, attachments, aversions, insecurities, then the need to assert oneself and make people recognize my power, all those things only trap us. So Daksha realizes all that. Now he seeks the protection of Lord Vishnu, and he starts, because it is his yajna and he has propitiated. So now you will see all the different types of beings and people who are there, they all glorify Lord Vishnu. So it starts with Daksha. So Daksha says that Daksha Uvacha Shuddham Swadhamyuparata Khila Buddhyavastham Chinmatramekam Abhayam Pratishidhya Mayam Tishthanstayaiva Purushattvamupetya Tasyam Aste Bhavan Parishuddha Ivat Matantraha. So he says that in your glorious being, you are pure consciousness, undifferentiated, fearless, beyond all states of mind. You are ever free, having negated Maya. But when assuming jivahood by the same Maya, you abide in that Maya and you appear as though tainted with the three gunas, Rajas, Tamas, Sattva, etc. So that is his glorification, that, oh Lord Vishnu, you are the absolute pure consciousness. And really speaking, protection from the ego comes only when we assert our true self, or the true nature of the self. And that is this. And what is that true nature of the self? Not somewhere inside my mind. It is one infinite consciousness. And that consciousness alone is creator, sustainer, destroyer, who has become Ishvara, and who has also, using the power of Ishvara, using the power of Maya, has become Ishvara. And so he says that ever free, having negated Maya, you are that Brahman free from Maya also. And you are only that consciousness which becomes Ishvara and creates the world, and then as though comes under the play of Maya and becomes the Jiva. So you are that pure consciousness which has become Ishvara also, Jagat also, and Jagadishvara also. Jiva also. All three, you are only that one consciousness. Then the priests, they say that, the priests, they think ritual is everything. And ritual will generate punya, and this punya will lead them to heaven, and it will give them other blessings also that they seek. And in that process, they also forget Bhagavan, that the karma phala comes from the Lord himself. So the priests, they say here that with our mind foolishly attached to the ritual, as a result of the imprecation uttered by Nandishvara, we know not your true character. We have known only that form of yours which is known by the name of sacrifice. Dharmopalakshanamidam Trivridhvarakhyam Jnatam. Now this sacrifice will give merit, dharma. And that is the theme of the three Vedas. And for conducting which the sphere of each particular deity has been defined. So who are the devatas? What are their realms? What is the offerings to be done to them? How they will bless? How the punya karma one will get? How one will enjoy that punya karma? All that one has understood from the Veda, but one has not understood the essence. These rituals, etc., are a means to purify the mind if it is done with the bhava of dedication to Bhagavan. By themselves, they will never lead to ultimate liberation. They may lead one to heaven, they may lead one to, greater prosperity, good health, proper family, name, fame, all that one may get because of punya. Satsang also one gets because of punya. But ultimate liberation comes only through jnana. Through what Daksha said, the realization that there is one consciousness alone. So they praise the Lord that actually you are the one who is to be propitiated through the yajna. Getting merit is secondary. Forgetting Bhagavan, if one is behind just some punya karma to go to heaven, one will not be free from cycle of birth and death. So that is what the priests, they praise the Lord. Then the head of the priests, the group of priests, whoever, either individual or the group called Brahma, they are the superintending priests. They give a nice analogy of the samsara. So what do they say? Tormented by desire and oppressed by the heavy burden of the body, which one thinks of as oneself, and the house, which one calls as one own. So I and mine. This company of ignorant folk has been traversing the path of transmigration. This is samsara. And what is the description of samsara? It is devoid of any shelter, difficult to tread on account of great hardships. There are fierce serpents of death ever lying in wait to devour these people who are passing through this journey of samsara. And though everybody is sure to meet that death, the senses are completely enamored by this mirage of sense pleasures. And there are also the pitfalls of pairs of opposites. Just imagine walking through a place where there are pitfalls, where there is a mirage of sense temptations. So one is not seeing pitfalls, nor is one seeing death waiting for the person in the form of fierce serpents. And then there are carnivorous animals on the way in the form of wicked people. And there is a wildfire around in that forest. What is that fire? The fire of grief. Even when one is passing through such a terrible place, see the question here. When will this crowd resort to your feet for shelter, O Lord, affording protection to all? One doesn't seek Bhagavan. How much samskar, punya, etc. is required to remember Bhagavan even at difficult times. Mind can become bitter, mind can resort to violence, to victimhood, to drugs, to alcohol, to anything. And that is what we see we getting encouraged in the world also. If you have problem, then smoke it out, or snort it out, or drink it out. Complete delusion. Already I have a problem, I need to deal with that. Now I'm adding another layer of problem with all these intoxicants and all that. And now in that deluded state, I may land up doing something, destroy someone, or tell something which is insulting, abusive, and then land up in further trouble. What kind of chaotic situation? The priests here, they are saying that in terrible samsara like this, where death is certain, the serpents are waiting, pitfalls of the pairs of opposites are there. This wild animals, carnivorous animals in the form of wicked people are there. There is a forest fire full of this grief. And in that there is a temptation of the sense enjoyments. And this person who is passing through all this still doesn't need your support and doesn't seek your protection, saying, Bhagavan, please help me out of this. How powerful is that Maya of Bhagavan? And by implication, obviously, if Maya of Bhagavan is so powerful, Bhagavan is Maya Pati, He is much more powerful. And if this Maya of the samsara has to be crossed, then one has to seek protection of Bhagavan. There is no other respite actually. We may take some other support, talk to some friend, unburden your heart, share with people, ask guidance, whatever. Those things one may do. But ultimately one should know that Bhagavan is my sole protector. The faster I seek the protection of the Lord and pray, surrender, tune up, the better it will be to come out of the samsara. So here that is a form of praise. That when will the Jiva ever take your refuge, O Lord? Then Lord Shiva, who is also called Rudra, he says that your charming feet, Tava Varada Varangrava Shishe Hakhilarthe, they confer all the desires. Whatever one seeks in the world, anyone is devoted to your lotus feet, all the desires get fulfilled. Your lotus feet are like that. They deserve to be worshipped. The Rudra is saying that your lotus feet deserve to be worshipped even by those hermits who are not attached to sense enjoyments. Because one should not think that, okay, we worship the Lord only to fulfill our desires. I don't have any desires, so I don't need to worship Bhagavan. If I don't have desire, then I will worship the Lord more, because that is the mind which has bhakti. That is the mind which has more purity of mind. It will naturally go towards Bhagavan. So here he says, even those ascetics who have not attached to sense enjoyments, your feet are worthy of worship even by such great renunciates. If ignorant folk dub me as one who has cast to winds all the rules of decorum, because Lord Shiva, we saw how Daksha criticized Lord Shiva. And he said, you have a garland of skulls and you are not clean and you have a long jata, and so many things he described. He says, if ignorant people, they think that I don't follow any rules and I live in a wild way. He says, my mind is fixed on your feet. It is by your supreme grace that I don't pay attention to any of these. Lord Shiva is saying this. This is a nice point to learn for a devotee. If we are anchored in our dharma, our duties, and we have bhakti towards the Supreme Lord, we don't have to bother what people are saying. Obviously, constructive criticism we can always take, improve ourselves, no denial of that. But if people say, like how Daksha criticized Lord Shiva, like that people may criticize us also. At this age, why do you need to do all these sadhanas? You must enjoy life. Where is God? Who has seen God? All this is only creation of some human beings. They wanted to dominate and control the society. It's a creation of some priest class. All these rituals are of no use. So many people will go on telling 20,000 things. Unfortunate. Our own people will criticize our own culture without knowing what it is meant for and what was the significance, why it is done, how it will benefit them even now. They will criticize the culture, they will criticize the practitioners of it, and then they will pose as though they are great, scientific, rational-minded people who are advanced and liberal in thinking and who are, not getting stuck in all these petty things. One should just ignore. There's no need to convince them. When their karma will become ripe, as and when what will has to happen, it will happen. Once or twice we can try, if some people are near and dear to us, we can try to explain to them, make them understand, find some deeper reasonings why certain things are done. If that doesn't work, leave it. In time, whatever has to happen, it will happen. We don't have to correct everybody or convince everybody. It doesn't That is not required. We must ensure that our Shraddha doesn't get shaken up by these people. Otherwise, we doubt our own pursuit. And then we stop doing that. Lord Shiva himself is saying, I don't care because my mind is absorbed in your lotus feet. So this is the glory of Bhagavan's feet. Those who want desire fulfillment, they will also get. They worship the Lord. Those who are renunciates, they also worship the Lord. They don't have desire and attachment for sense objects, but they also worship. And Bhagavan Shiva himself says, my mind is abiding in your lotus feet, so it doesn't matter what people talk to me about my appearance and what I do and how I look and all that. It doesn't matter. I do what I have to do. With my dharma I am doing, and I am absorbed in your lotus feet. Bas. Nothing more is required. Then Bhrigu Rishi is saying that Brahma and other embodied beings who have been deprived of self-knowledge by your incomprehensible Maya and sleep in the darkness of ignorance are unable to know even to this day your reality, which permeates their own self. Therefore, be gracious to them, since you are the friend, the very self of your suppliants. Now people ask about Bhrigu Rishi. Bhrigu Rishi, so there are two opinions. One opinion is he is an enlightened master, enlightened being, and he does leelas to glorify Bhagavan. Last time I think we discussed also this, and that is one opinion. In some of the cycles of creation, he is also one of the Saptarishis. Second opinion is people say, no, he is an advanced seeker. A great Rishi, maybe a great Siddha also, having some great powers also, and still a great devotee of Bhagavan. So he has access to all the three, Brahmalok, Vishnu, Vaikuntha and Shivalok. He can go anywhere. So one can say either of them, whichever. He's an enlightened being or is a great devotee or an advanced seeker, whichever one wants to. So he says, you please bless everyone with the knowledge of the self. From Brahmaji to all the jivas, all are ignorant. Please bless. What does Brahmaji himself say? Brahmaji says, what jiva perceives through the senses, that is not real. And you are not limited by that. So, he says here, your reality is not what the jiva perceives through the senses, because the senses will see duality. And so the senses, the sense object and their connection, the knowledge of the sense object will rise. So when the senses contact the sense object, there is a knowledge of sense object which will arise. He says all these three are not you. You are the enlivening force of all the three. These three are called Triputi. The knower, the known, and the knowledge. The eye is the seer. Let us say this computer is the seen, and the knowledge of the computer rising in the mind because eye contacts the seen. So in that way, if one says that Bhagavan is only this form, Brahmaji says, no, you are not limited by the form. You are that consciousness because of which the eye can see the form and the knowledge of the form is rising. That's what he means here. That you are the very ground of knowledge, the object of perception and the senses, and therefore distinct from this illusory world of matter. What we see as matter, the substratum of that is the Supreme Lord. Jnanasya charthasya gunasya chashrayo maya mayad vyatirikto yatastvam. The world of Triputi is illusory, maya maya. You are different from this, meaning you are the substratum, which is appearing as this. But you are not limited by this. So you are that infinite consciousness. Indra says that this personality of yours, O immortal Lord, which has manifested the universe and is distinguished by 8 long and stout arms holding weapons in readiness to exterminate enemies of gods, brings delight to our souls and eyes. Indra is concerned with that. His demons have to be destroyed. And Vishnu Bhagavan manifested with 8 arms, and all the arms have, some ayudha or some weapon or some, like a conch. We are very happy. Why? Because these demons will get destroyed. The enemies of gods. Sura Vidvat Takshapanai Rudayudhaihi Bhujadandai Rupapannam Ashtabhihi. And that's what he says. We are very delighted to see this form of yours. It brings delight to our soul and our eyes. How interesting it is. One form of Bhagavan only is manifesting. All are seeing that one form with 8 arms. But each one is glorifying Bhagavan based on their own mind state. Nobody can copy somebody else's thoughts. Whatever is there in one's own mind at that point will manifest. So that's what is happening. Now the wives of the priests are saying this. So they say here, Patnya Uchuhu. This sacrifice which was evolved by Brahma as a means of worshipping you has been wrecked today by Lord Shiva, who was angered by Daksha. Therefore, you are the embodiment of all yajna. You are called yajna itself. So, O Lord, who are yajna, please hallow this sacrifice of ours, which has been robbed of all joy and festivity and wears the desolate appearance of a crematory. With your eyes, which are like a lovely pair of lotuses. So just with your glance, you look around and the whole thing as though will get a shine, an effulgence. Right now it looks desolated because war has happened. They are concerned with how it looks, how it has to be again made into like that festive atmosphere types of a situation. So then the rishis are saying that Ananvitam te bhagavan vicheshtitam yadatmana charasihi karman ajyase vibhutaye yata upasedurishwarim namanyate swayamanu vartatim bhavan. So singular are your doings, O Lord, in that while you perform deeds yourself, you are not affected by them. So we do karmas, we get affected by karmas, we get bound by karmas. But Bhagavan does karma, but karma will not bind. Why? Bhagavan is infinite and his karma is not born out of ahankar like us. His karma is meant for the jiva kalyan only. And it is a leela of the Lord also. So it doesn't bind. You do not think much even of Lakshmi. Mother Lakshmi, everybody runs behind her, pursues Lakshmi Devi, they seek wealth, power, position, all that. And Lakshmi Devi is waiting for you. Lakshmi Devi is serving your feet. So you are that Supreme Lord. That is what the rishis they say. What do the Siddhas say? Scorched by the wildfire of afflictions, oppressed by the thirst of sensuous enjoyment, this elephant of our mind has plunged into the river of pure nectar in the shape of your stories, and thinks no more of that forest conflagration, nor comes out of the river like the one that has attained oneness with Brahma. Brahma here means Brahman. So Siddhas literally means that. Those who are perfected beings, those who have realized oneness, and for some reason the Lord himself gives them the duty as though to maintain a subtle form to guide the seekers in the creation. So they are perfected beings. They are called siddhas. So that's why they are saying here that this, what was said earlier, no, by the superintending priests about this samsara and conflagration of wildfire and serpents and pitfalls and carnivorous animals and all that. He says from that, the mind is not bothered about it because it has, completely plunged into the river of pure nectar. Of what? Your stories. Tvat katham mrishta piyusha nadyam. The stories of Bhagwan. Absorbed in the stories of the Lord, that is like a huge lake of nectar in which they have drowned themselves, they have plunged themselves. So they don't want to come out of that. And they are unaffected by this samsara forest fire. And through the stories only they have attained oneness with the Supreme. So stories we cannot just write off saying, oh, what, these are only stories. Each story has a lot to contemplate upon, purify our mind. And so many stories, you see the reflection and the description of Bhagwan's true nature is also given. What is the self? Like Brahmaji said, no, you are not this form, the entire realm of sense objects, the senses, the contact, that is not you. You are the consciousness which appears as all these three, enlivens all these three. So there is Vedant, Atmajnan, even in the stories. They are not just stories of some war and, between gods and demons and all that. Those are also a part of the story, but the main intent of the story is something else only. It will be dharma, it will be bhakti, it will be vairagya, it will be jnana. That will be the main intent of most of the stories. So these are the siddhas. Then the yajamans. Along with Daksha, there may have been some more yajamans. So all of them, they are saying, welcome is your visit to this sacrifice. Be gracious to me. Hail to you, O Lord, O abode of Shri. May you and your beloved spouse, Goddess Lakshmi, protect us. Without you, a sacrifice, though complete in all its limbs, does not present a charming look any more than a man without a head, a mere trunk, though perfect in all other limbs. It's a nice analogy. Any ritual, any sadhana that we do, if bhakti is not there in it, one should remember it's like a headless person. All the other limbs are perfect, well-toned muscles and abs and calf muscles and all that, proper, perfected body. Head only is not there. In our life also, so many things we have, wealth, power, position, name, fame, glory, this, that. If bhakti is not there, it's like a headless person. That all the limbs are useless. Daksha was like that before. Though he had a head, he was actually like a headless person. How interesting is that? At that time, he had a physical head, but actually he's like a headless person. After that, his head was cut. So he literally lost his head. But then the right head has come to him now. Now he has bhakti for the Lord. Now he is a proper transformed person. Then the Lokapalas, they are saying certain things. Yogeshwaras are saying certain things. It goes on like that. So the Lokapalas are saying, can you be seen with our senses, revealing as they do this illusory world of matter? You are the witness, you who witness things from within our heart and by whom all this phenomenal world is seen. I mean, Bhagwan is the seer in us, the Sakshi, because of whom everything else is seen. And who is the real observer, the seen, the seer, is that supreme consciousness. And it is your Maya that, though the sixth, meaning 5 elements, the effects, and Maya, the cause. So the sixth element as though. So it is your Maya that, though the sixth, you appear invested with a material body. Using the Maya, that Supreme Lord as though takes a form, but he is formless. He is the infinite seer, the consciousness inside. That's what he means to say. Then there are Yogeshwaras. The Yogeshwaras are saying, no one else is dearer to you than he, O Lord, who sees no difference between you, the soul of the universe, and himself. This is called Advaita Vedanta. And this is in Bhagavatam. So one should not think Bhagavatam is only Dvaita and duality. This is pure Advaita. He's saying that there is to the Lord, that person is the dearest. In the Gita also 4 types of devotees. He says, Jnani tu Atmaiva me matam. Artho, Jignasu, Artharthi, and then Jnani. Jnani is the dearest to the Lord. Why? Because Jnani, Aham Sacha Mama Priyaha. He says, I and the Jnani are one. He says that devotee is the dearest to you. He says, nevertheless, be gracious, O lover of your devotees, to them who resort to you with exclusive devotion as to their master. Then there are devotees who also have the bhav of Dvaita, and they surrender to you that you are the Lord, I am the devotee, you are the Guru, I am the disciple. That way one has that bhav of Dvaita and one surrenders. He says, you please be gracious on them also. By your Maya, which exhibits a large variety of gunas due to destiny of jivas, you give rise to a sense of diversity with regard to yourself. Meaning, because of the Maya of Bhagavan, that one infinite consciousness appears as 3, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. So for the creation, preservation and destruction of the universe, though in your absolute own state, you have cast off from yourself all motions of diversity as well as the 3 gunas. This is Advaita. So though Vishnu Bhagavan is glorified in this, Bhagavatam very clearly also speaks about the oneness of all the 3, that Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh are one, they are not different. Then why Vishnu Bhagavan is considered superior here? That is because to bring the bhavana of Shraddha, Sharanagati in the devotees, and also to bring single pointedness in their mind, that don't look here and there. Be focused on one. That Vishnu Bhagavan is everyone, is everything. There is nothing more beyond that. So surrender to that Lord. In Hanuman Chalisa it will be said, Aura Devata Chittana Dharai. Hanumat say Sarva Sukha Karai. In Shiv Puran it will be Lord Shiva. In Devi Bhagavatam it will be Mother Kali. So each place, that particular deity is considered supreme. But the oneness of that deity with all the other forms also will be explained in that Purana. One should not forget that. Otherwise one keeps getting confused and then one will start fighting with each other. My deity is great, my God is greater than your God. Useless that is. Unnecessary fighting for no reason. When they themselves are saying that we are all one, that Bhagavan Vishnu himself will say later on also, here the Yogeshwaras are saying. Then Brahmaji, again he says, that you take upon yourself the quality of sattva in order to yield dharma and other objects of human pursuit. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Bhagavan takes up sattva guna and he manifests to bless people with this. And you are at the same time destitute of all attributes. So you are beyond all the gunas also, and whose real nature neither I nor even others know. Fire. Agni Devata is the one who receives all the oblations and passes it on to the Devatas. So he says, with my flames brightly kindled by your effulgence. See that? Agni Devata is also very clear. This brightness, this heat, this light in me is not my own. It is your effulgence. Because of that, this fire is kindling bright. He says, I bear to gods the oblation soaked in clarified butter in every good sacrifice. So Agni Devata is able to convey the ahutis offered to the Devatas. But that entire yajna, he says, you are the yajna, personified as well as the protector of the sacrifices. You are fivefold in character. So the 5 types of yajnas which are there, Agnihotra, Darsha, Purnamasa, and Chaturmasya and Pashushoma. 5 types of yajnas. And you are duly worshipped with 5 kinds of sacrificial formulas, the mantras which are chanted. Occurring in Yajurveda, he says, I bow low to you. So, Ashravaya, Shraushat, Yaja, Ye Yajamahe, and Vashat. Different types of mantras in Yajurveda specifically. You have to ask some ritualist if you want to know what are these. I am not aware of these 5, what they mean technically. Even the 5 types of sacrifices, I know Agnihotra, Chaturmasya is that which is done in the Chaturmasa, and Darsha and Purnamasa, I forgot actually what it is. It comes even in Mundaka Upanishad, Darsha Purnamasa. Even in Rudram it comes, the Darsha Purnamasa. That I will tell you next class. And this Pashu Shoma. So Agni praises the Lord through this, that my effulgence is there because of you, and because of your glory, I am able to convey this oblations to the Devatas. But you are actually Yajnapati, you are the protector of the Yajna also, and you are only worshipped through the 5 types of Yajnas and the 5 types of mantras which are chanted. Then the Devatas, they say that at the end of the previous round of creation and before this creation, it was you, the first Purusha, the Adi Purusha, who reposed on the excellent bed of Shesha, on whose waters on those waters submerged all the 3 worlds. So when the entire world is in Pralay, Bhagavan remains on his Sheshanag. That same Lord, the way of whose realization is sought after in their heart, even by the Siddhas. The Siddhas also are these, what we saw earlier, they sang the glories. They also have these 8 great powers, Anima, Mahima, Garima, Laghima, then Prakamya, Prakashya, Ishitva, Vashitva, 8. Ashta Siddhi Navnidhi ke Data, Hanuman Chalisa it comes. So these are 8 Siddhis. These people have these Siddhis. So these Siddhas, they in their heart, they want to realize this same Supreme Lord. He says that Lord, who is a primal Purusha, Adi Purusha, has appeared before our eyes today to protect us, your dependents, your servants. Gandharvas, they say these Marichi and other sages, as well as the host of divinities such as Brahma, Indra and others with Rudra at their head, are but rays of your part manifestations. They are all only part, Amsha. Amsham Shaste Deva Marichadaya Ete. O Shining One, we ever make obeisance to you. O Infinite Lord, to whom this universe is a mere toy box. Vidyadharas, they are another class of devatas, demigods. After attaining the human body, a means of realizing the object of human pursuit, that is moksha, the foolish jiva regards it as his own, his very self, and though reproached by his own senses that have strayed from the path of virtue, he longs only for the unreal pleasure of the senses. He alone who quaffs the nectar of your stories is able to shake off completely the infatuation of his mind. Again, the glory of Harikatha. Then the Brahmanas, what do they say? They are saying full Advaita now. See, what we see, no? Brahmarpanam, Brahmavihi, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina in the Gita. And we chant this shloka before we have food. So that's called Brahma Yajna, where everything is seen with the idea that this is Brahman alone. The fire is Brahman, the offering is Brahman, the ghee is Brahman, the performer is Brahman, the ladle with which is offered is Brahman, everything is Brahman. That is here. You are the sacrifice, you are the offering, you are yourself the fire, you are the mantra, you are the sacrificial wood, the kusha grass, the sacrificial vessels, the priests, the superintending and the officiating, the sacrifice, the sacrificer, his wife, the deity, the act of offering, the oblations offered to the Pitrus, the juice extracted from the soma plant, the clarified butter, the sacrificial animal. All this is you. Then appearing as that Varaha avatar we saw. It says appearing as the mighty boar, it was you who sportfully lifted the earth out of the depth of the ocean on your tusks. And the example given here is even like a lordly elephant would lift a lotus plant. For the elephant, what is a lotus? Hardly anything. Bhagwan lifted the entire earth just like a lotus. Effortlessly the elephant will lift it like that. Roaring and being glorified by the yogis. The Vedas constitute your very body, and you are both the institution of sacrifice and the vow to perform a sacrifice. Therefore, please be gracious to us, whose noble undertaking was interrupted and who were longing for your sight. Interruptions in sacrificial performances disappear when your name is chanted by men. If any interruptions happen, chant the name of Bhagwan and then continue. That's what he means. So all these people have done the stuti of Lord Vishnu. So Maitreya Rishi continues. He says that as Bhagwan Vishnu was being propitiated by all these people, the share of offering that Bhagwan Vishnu has to take. Now he says here that the Lord, who is the enjoyer of all oblations, being the self of all, accosted Daksha. Now that Lord accepted the oblations and then he spoke to Daksha specifically. Because Daksha is the main Yajman also. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aham Brahmacha Sharvascha Jagatakaranam Param Atmeshwara Upadrashta Swayam Drug Avisheshanaha. Says the supreme cause of the universe, I only am Brahma and I am only Shiva. I am the self, the Lord, the witness of all, the self-effulgent and the unqualified. See, what was said earlier by the Yogeshwaras is now repeated by Lord Vishnu, that I am only all these. I am only Brahma also and I am only Shiva also. So don't create division. That's what it means. Because Daksha did that. That was one of the mistakes Daksha did, was this. This Yajna episode also shows that very clearly, that Daksha saw these three as separate. And he insulted Lord Shiva specifically. He didn't keep a seat for Lord Shiva. For Brahmaji and Vishnu, it is there, but they didn't come. That's a different matter. But for Lord Shiva, he didn't even keep. That is a separation that he did. By insulting Lord Shiva, he is insulting both Brahmaji and Vishnu Bhagwan also. So that is a mistake that he did. So here Bhagwan is correcting that and telling him that I am also Brahma and I am also Lord Shiva. Embracing my own Maya consisting of the three gunas, it is I who create, protect and destroy the universe and have assumed diverse names such as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, appropriate to my functions. Very clear. If anybody wants to create a division in their mind, then that is the ignorance. Oneness is what is to be experienced. And if somebody argues about who is greater, Brahma, Shiva or Vishnu, one should quote these verses, saying this, Bhagavan himself said this, that there is only one truth and that only has appeared as all this. It is such a Brahma, here Brahma now in the 52nd verse means Tasmin Brahmanyadvitiye Kevale Paramatmane Brahma Rudraucha Bhutani Bhede Nagnyo Anupashyati. Here it is Brahman, it is absolute Brahman, which is Advitiye, which is non-dual, which is alone, which is the supreme, that the ignorant fools view that Brahman as Brahma, Rudra and other beings as distinct entities. They all are appearance of one Brahman. Just as a man never conceives his own head, hands and other limbs as belonging to anyone else, even so he who is devoted to me does not regard his fellow creatures as distinct from himself. So the sense of oneness is what the devotee must have. That one Supreme Lord is appearing as all this, and so don't create divisions. He who sees no difference between us three, who are identical in essence, and the very selves of all living beings, attains supreme peace. See this. This entire portion is beautiful. Any person has any doubt about who is more glorious, who is less glorious, all that, one can just quote this portion from Bhagavatam and say this is what it is. There is absolute oneness, and very, very clearly Bhagavan is saying this, that only those who see no difference between us three, who are identical in essence, the very selves of all living beings, they attain absolute peace. Sa shantim ati gacchati. Now this portion concludes here the portion of Daksha, the Daksha sacrifice, and then the entire Leela that happened. That concludes here. The Dharma portion has been now explained. So Maitreya Rishi, now he concludes here. He says, thus enlightened by the Lord, Daksha worshipped Sri Hari through the sacrifice sacred to himself. And then the other gods, both through the principal and the secondary types of sacrifices. With a concentrated mind, he also waited upon Lord Rudra. Now Daksha understood, they all are one. So with the same single pointed mind, Rudram cha svena bhagena yupadhavat samahitaha. So he gave the share due to Rudra also to Lord Shiva, and then to all the other devatas also he gave. So even so upon the other gods, including those that drink the soma juice and those who don't, through the rite called Udvasana. And thus, having concluded the sacrifice, he then performed, along with the priest, the sacred ablutions known by the name Avabhrita. So one has to take bath, snan, Avabhrita snan it is called. After the rituals are over, one will do that. So he did that Avabhrita snan. And having blessed Daksha, who had by his own greatness attained supernatural powers with devotion to righteousness, the gods ascended to heaven. Now what happened to Sati? So Maitreya Rishi says that Sati, who she had cast off as her own body, she was reborn through Mena, the spouse of Himavan. Evam dakshayane hitva sati purvakalevaram jagne himavata kshetre menayamiti shushruma. Just as having lain dormant, the divine energy embraces the Lord, Mother Ambika sought union once more with her beloved spouse, Lord Shiva, her only resort, exclusively devoted as she was to him. This concludes the Daksha Prasanga, and now the Falashruti comes. Etad Bhagavata Shambho Karma Daksha Dvaradruhaha Shrutam Bhagavatat Chishyad Uddhavan me Brihaspatehe. So this story about Lord Shiva and this whole Daksha Prasanga, Maitreya Rishi has heard this from Uddhavji. And Uddhavji is the disciple of Brihaspati. And the Falashruti here says that the man who, with a feeling of devotion, daily listens to and repeats this sanctifying story of Lord Shiva, which confers renown and longevity and wipes out a multitude of sins, shakes off all the sin, O Vidura. So that's the Falashruti of studying this prasang and chanting this prasang, reflecting upon this prasang. So one portion of this fourth canto is over. Dharma portion is over. Now the next portion will be Artha, and for that we will see the story of Dhruva. Any questions for today? Okay, so let's do the Aarti.
मंगल आरती प्रिया प्रीतम की, मंगल प्रीति रीति धूम की, मंगल कांति हसनी दसनन की, मंगल मुरली दीना धुन की, मंगल आरती। मंगल बनिक त्रिभंगी हरि की, मंगल सेवा सब सहचर की, मंगल सिर चंद्रिका मुकुट की, मंगल छवि नयन में अटकी, मंगल आरती। पभी अंग अंग की, मंगल गौर श्याम रंग की, मंगल अति कटि पियरे पट की, मंगल चितमणि नागर नट की, मंगल आरती। मंगल शोभा कमल नयन की, मंगल माधुरी मृदुल पैन की, मंगल वृंदावन मद अटकी, मंगल क्रीडन जमुना तट की, मंगल आरती। मंगल चरण अरुण तरुवन की, मंगल करणी भगति हरिजन की, मंगल जुगल प्रिया भावन की, मंगल श्री राधा जीवन की, मंगल आरती प्रिया प्रीतम की, मंगल प्रीति रीति डोल की, मंगल आरती। मंगल आरती। राधावर कृष्णचंद्र भगवान की जय। ओम न तत्र सूर्यो भाति न चंद्र तारकम, नेमा विद्युतो भान्ति कुतोऽयम् अग्निः, तमेव भान्तमनुभाति सर्वं, तस्य भासा सर्वमिदं विभाति। श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की।
ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति शांति शांति। हरि ओम। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम।